When you're getting into the tastytrade platform on our trading page here, a few things if you're brand new to the platform, some layout and navigation to get started. On our left side here, we're going to have our left side panel. This is our main navigation bar to go between our different pages. For example, right now we're looking at the watch list tab. This is going to be a list of symbols based on different sectors or preset watch lists of companies, ETFs. You can look at futures, you can look at crypto, just all of the available trading products on our platform you can find in the watch list tab. And here you can find applicable information as to, the pricing, the change in price, the high and low price. You can look at dividend yield, market capitalization, a bunch of different values as well. You can add and adjust your watch list as you see fit. We'll go into that in just a little bit. But then our main section that we'll get into as well is our news and research tab. So if you're on the desktop platform, it's very similar to this, where you'll have on the left side this little navigation bar. You want to look for this icon right here where it looks like a little or a little square with a bar chart inside of it. If you click on that, it's going to take you to our news and research tab. So this will be spending a decent chunk of our time today talking about fundamental analysis. But then just some other things to keep in mind or kind of housekeeping stuff is that we were in that watch list tab before. If you want to have a watch list while you're also navigating, say, our news and research tab or maybe the charts as well. So, we have our middle window there. If we want to still have that watch list as well, we can go to our left, or not left, but our right side panel here, click on watch list, and now we have our watch list here on the right side too. What's great about the web platform here is that there's also going to be one on the left side as well. So this will look a little more similar to the desktop platform here, but technically you can kind of customize it as you see fit if you want it on the left or on the right side. Great. So we can close off the left side. We'll use our right side watch list. But while you're navigating the platform, the watch list is essential as you're quickly looking to scan between different symbols or trade those different symbols as well. So imagine we're looking at our technology watch list here on the right side panel. We can tap on this drop down here and we can see a bunch of different preset watch lists. Personally, I like to, even you can go to market indices, go to S&P 500, find all the symbols for all the companies, everything else that's in the S&P 500, or we can go to sectors, maybe go to technology. We can find all the US stocks and ETFs that are in the technology industry. And now if we're wanting to, for example, maybe look at a chart on a specific symbol, there's a couple ways we can view that. So right now we're looking at Home Depot HD. So we'll talk about this a little bit later once we get into the financials. But we have Home Depot here at the top, right? This is our active symbol header where we can see the name of the company, the implied volatility rank, last price, change in price for the day. So it's down $2.62 and it's down about 0.73%. We can also see the bid and the ask price, the amount of volume of contracts traded today. So Home Depot, 1.14 mil. It's pretty liquid or pretty highly traded company, and you can see the name as well. And now if we wanted to look at the chart, all we need to do is just go to our chart tab here, click on that, and then we'll see the chart on Home Depot. But say we want to look at a different company, maybe one of its competitors. We want to look at Lowe's. So, Father's Day came up recently. I'm surprised that my dad didn't tell me to go pick up 20 bags of rocks from Lowe's, but alas, we skipped that this year. But if we want to look up Lowe's, we can type in Lowe's at the top of the platform. And here in the symbol search, so let me get rid of my drawings here.
The apostrophe always gets me with
Yeah.
Lowe's.
I was about to say, I'm like, I'm not used to that. So if we type in the start of it, or we could do um, we could just type in the start of it or low, and we'll see the search results here, and we can click on that. Let me go back to Zoom's giving me a hard time. But we can click on that, and now you'll notice that our active symbol header is updated to Lowe's, and we're looking at a chart on Lowe's. So that's one way to do it. Now, on the flip side, again, the watch list becomes extremely useful. So imagine we want to look at a bunch of different charts on these symbols in the technology industry. We can go to our right side watch list here and just click on AAPL or Apple, and that's going to update our active symbol header and our chart. We can click on Microsoft in our watch list, updates the top and our chart. So as you're going through our different tabs here, either on the research tab, on the trade tab, any of our different applicable tabs here in terms of looking up a company's information or trying to place a trade on it, the watch list tab makes it super, super easy to quickly scan between these symbols. So you can see I'm
And the
just
nice
clicking
part is
on.
too is that typically all your charting information will stay the same. So if you're evaluating something, you have like specific indicators you're using or a specific time period, you can click through the watch list and it'll stay the same. So you can kind of compare apples to apples per company if you would like.
Exactly. And I see someone toss in the chat there that, hey, my watch list is on the left side. So if you're on the desktop platform by default, it should look a little bit more like this, where you have your, let me collapse this a bit. It should look like this, where you have your watch list on the left side, you got your navigation bar on the left, and then you also have a right side panel here. So based on your preference, you can have a watch list on the left or the right. But again, it's nice to have this up to make navigation a bit easier as you're going through the platform. But now that we've gone through some of the basic navigation here, I'll collapse our left side watch list too. We'll keep this open on the right. And we'll actually maybe go into our overview section on the right side panel too. Go into overview. This will just give us some information on the company here on the right side. So this is just basic information that we can see. We can start to see some of the financials that we might look at for fundamental analysis, like volume, market cap, EPS, P ratio, dividend yield too. So we can get a little brief description here in the overview section. Again, a nice little tab here on the right side, and we can also see a chart on it. So we'll have that open while we go into our research tab. But while we're looking to get into fundamental analysis, we can go to our left side panel here. And again, on the desktop platform, if you look at your left side navigation bar, it'll have these symbols here. It might look a little more condensed, but one of those buttons here looks exactly the same as this. And you click on it to get to research and news. Here in our research and news tab, before we get into looking at the financials and ratios, two tabs that are super, super nice is that first, we're going to have our news tab. So, before we were looking at Home Depot. So maybe we want to look at some news on Home Depot. Well, we can type in Home Depot on our symbol search or company search at the top. So type in Home Depot, click on that. And now we'll see all of the recent news coming in on Home Depot. You can click on an article and see that now looks like CEOs might have changed recently for the company. So you can read about that in platform if you're looking to, especially if you're looking at charting and you're like, hey, why was there this big price move? Or just want to see what's going on with the company as of recent. It's a nice little section to check out. And then also too, think most of us, I mean, honestly, international customers or people that are tuning in Ireland or whatever, probably don't have Home Depot there, right? So you're like, what is Home Depot? Well, if you want to learn about what the company is and what it does, we have an about section here where you can read about the company, see what they do. So Home Depot, generally, building materials, home improvements. It's where you go to buy your big 2x4s and get all your gardening supplies
It's where
and
your
or
dad would live when you were a
yes,
kid, pretty
yes,
much.
exactly. So that is great. We also have some other information in terms of, you can see the different officers, CEOs, some other information as to how many employees. So Home Depot has almost 500K employees, which is very, very impressive. Makes sense with how many stores they have. And also there is a nice little financial summary here that kind of breaks down some of the recent financials as to how much they've increased or decreased over the last quarter. So again, it's a nice little brief section. We can get into it a little bit later, but let's go ahead and get into our financials. So if we go to the financials tab here, so let's get into some fundamental analysis. So in its base, you can get into fundamental analysis or looking at researching a company's financial health through various metrics and financial ratios. So right now, you'll see on our screen here, we're looking at either the income statement or balance sheet. So when people are talking about fundamental analysis, we're looking at a company's revenue, its liabilities, its cash flow, its dividends per share. So we're looking at all these different metrics that come in from a company's financials that they have to report each year. And mainly people or researchers or financial advisors or analysts are doing fundamental analysis to identify if a company is overvalued or undervalued or to determine its future performance based on historical values. So when you're looking to get into stock trading and you're trying to find, hey, is this a good stock for me to buy? A lot of people might start by going into technical analysis, which is looking at charts and doing drawings or looking at certain studies or indicators like a simple moving average or a relative strength index. So that's one way to do some analysis on stock trading, but fundamental analysis is looking at the raw metrics that are coming from the company's financials over the past quarters or over the past year. So off the bat here, when you get into our financials section, you'll find that we're looking at the income statement. So what's nice is that we can see the income statement over a quarterly or annual basis. And the income statement is really just showing us a company's revenue and expenses over a specific period. And it can show us kind of the financial health and also just the general profitability. Got a tongue twister there, of the company. And, it's important to look at this, especially as you're trying to compare a company against its competitors to see how it might be doing over the past several years or over the last few quarters to see its current stability, to see if it's looking towards more growth, or if it's a little more of a risky investment. So in our income statement here, we have revenue, which is the total money received from just selling goods and services. Then below that is the net income, which is going to be the profit left up after all expenses, taxes, and costs. So the main thing that we're looking at here between net income and revenue is the net profit margin. So that's going to be the net income divided by the revenue. And generally, the higher that is, the better it's going to be. So you want to ideally, the net profit margin, looking at what percentage of sales are becoming profit. So obviously you want more profit out of your sales. So in the case of looking at, and I was kind of looking at, let's see, maybe here we could pull up TSM or Taiwan
Ah,
Semiconductors. And we can see here that, let me pull up my drawing tools one more time.
bigger,
Bada
much
bing.
bigger ratio here
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
TSM.
So here we can see our revenue and our net income. Drag this over a little bit. And we can see as we're going through the last year that it's generally been on an upward trend. Now we can see as well the net income has been following a relatively same path, but looking at a company that has similar growth over this year, this is a relatively strong look at an investment or buying this stock. Obviously, we're just looking at this for example purposes. This isn't like an indication to be like, oh, go buy TSM. But while you're looking at a company's financials, generally, and also, that too is that TSM microchips or what is it, transistors, I think. It's a very popular company and it's relatively high performance based on how many of our chips come from TSM in the USA. Now, if you look at some of the recent news or some of the global looks on TSM2, it is Taiwan, and there is some fears around what's happening with China as well. So, as much as you can look at the income statement, and you go, "Oh, they're growing each quarter," or if we look at it on an annual basis as well, it's like, "Oh, wow, they've had really great growth. It seems like it's on an upward trend that's going to keep going up. Maybe this is worth a buy." Well, just based on the metrics, yes, that's true. But you got to consider those other factors too, that there are these socioeconomic or these global economic events or events that
Go to the
can,
macro
yeah,
picture, you
yeah,
know, the
looking at the
global
macro picture. Yeah,
global
exactly.
economic, sociopolitical macro situation. The financials really only tell you the company specifically, right? Like you could look at all the historical data, but if the industry is taking a nosedive, right, you always have to be thinking, like Christian said, of the bigger picture as well. This is just one piece.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then on the flip side too, if we maybe look at we can stay on this too, but just some things to keep in mind when you're looking at the income statement as well is that, some red flags that might be like, you want to look a little deeper into the company or you might want to stray away is if you see revenue growing, but net income is shrinking. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a terrible thing, but it can be an indication that it's either a riskier investment or that it might not be going too well for the company. Same goes with volatile quarterly swings. So, generally, in terms of getting, if we're looking at long-term investing in terms of getting into stock trading, that the volatile swings each quarter means that there's a lot of inconsistency within the company in terms of how they're operating and how some of those global or country factors play into its overall profits or profitability. And then as well, we can look at some other things here underneath. We can look at our balance sheet. So this is another place that financial analysts are looking at. And a balance sheet is simply just showing us a company's assets versus its liabilities. So it's just a financial snapshot of its overall total positions. And one of the big ratios or things to look at here is the debt to equity ratio. So that would be the total liabilities divided by shareholder equity. Or you can look at the ratio of current assets against liabilities. And generally, if it's above one, it's not it's pretty decent. The main thing that you want to see here is that, for example, when we're looking at TSM here, is that the overall assets is better than the amount of debt that they have right now. So, if we looked at Tesla in the past, they had a pretty large amount of debt, but that's because they were going for some pretty intense growth in the company. So again, you kind of need to look at some of this with a grain of salt, where yes, from TSM's perspective, it's relatively pretty consistent company where you see that their overall liabilities between each quarter, and then maybe if we look on an annual basis as well, has steadily increased, but on a pretty steady basis. And with that, its overall assets have also increased as well. So it's a relatively pretty consistent company. Again, if we looked at Tesla a few years back, it was all over the place. But I know we were
You
looking
also
at,
you can't
yeah,
forget
go
to
ahead.
look at the industry as well. So the liabilities is going to change per industry depending on how mature that industry is. So for something like semiconductors, since it's relatively newer compared to some other consumer industries, maybe a higher debt is normal. So it's always important to keep it within context of the industry overall.
Exactly. And then one thing too is that, you can either look at from a asset to debt ratio or debt to asset. If you're looking at the debt to asset ratio, you generally want that to be below one. So, some red flags again that you're looking at a company that it might be pretty inconsistent or a bit of a risk, or that they might be going into a little bit of turmoil based on current market conditions or how they're operating, is when you see that debt to asset ratio where we're looking at the liabilities divided by the assets. If it's getting kind of like 70-80%. It's not too hot. So if we look at TSM, its debt to asset ratio is about 25%. So it's pretty darn good. Not looking too bad. Now, if we go back to our top here and maybe look at what we were looking at, Lowe's earlier. So an example of a company that has a pretty egregious amount of debt, and the debt to asset ratio is greater than one, especially over the last few years, is going to be Lowe's. So you can see here that consistently their liabilities have pretty much stayed the same. Their assets have almost stayed the same, varying slightly. So the company's relatively pretty stagnant and overall not looking the best. So in terms of looking at overall growth, maybe not the strongest place to go into. Again, this is something that it's all relative to the overall industry as well. So we're looking at Lowe's, right? Well, one of its competitors is Home Depot. So we can pull up Home Depot, search for that, and we can see that, yeah, it makes sense. Its competitors, it's relatively the same. But conversely, you can see that over the last year, over the past few years, that ratio is a little bit less. So maybe it's an inkling to go, oh, well, maybe if instead of buying Lowe's, I maybe want to look into Home Depot. So there's certain strengths to each company, and they do have differences in how they operate and or the services they do offer. But that can play into if it's more of a buy for you, or if you want to allocate more of your portfolio into that stock. Let's go into the ratios tab here. We get into the ratios tab. This is where we're going to find a bunch more metrics that people look at for fundamental analysis when determining if a company is overvalued, undervalued, if it's worth a buy right now, or if it might be better than one of its competitors. So I'll hand it off to you, Luke. Maybe talk about what you're going to talk about, EPS, maybe.
Yeah, EPS. So first I'll touch on market cap. So when investing in stocks, market cap is always good to look at because generally speaking, right, the market cap is going to tell you where a company is in its sort of growth cycle. So any companies above 200 billion are going to be considered large growth or large cap, I mean, or mega cap. So these are going to have the highest liquidity to trade on with the most volume. And these typically will be a bit more stable. It's not a hard rule, but it's going to be a bit more stable than the mid or the small caps. And then there is micro cap, which we don't really offer much of that. That's more like penny stocks and stuff. So we won't really go into that. But when it comes to ratios, the first ratio we'll go over is the EPS or earnings per share. And that's just the net profits earnings divided by the number of common shares it has trading. And so this is one of the first ratios that people like to use. And the earnings per share just kind of tells you roughly how much money is this company making per outstanding share it has. And sort of gives you an idea of whether the company could be overvalued or undervalued, depending on how it compares to the other EPS for other companies in its similar industry. So when we're taking a look at Home Depot, we actually have it on the side here, the EPS. Do we show where is EPS shown?
It's going to be right, right there.
Ah, there it is, hiding. So yeah, we see the EPS earnings per share is about 14.73. And I wonder what Lowe's is like since we're comparing the two. I'm very
Let's
curious.
see. So pull up Lowe's here.
Okay. So you see, we were already kind of talking about earlier how Home Depot has a little less debt to revenue. And you can see that actually reflects in the EPS as well, where the earnings per share on Lowe's is a little lower, about $2.50 lower. So that's about how much money they're taking in per share of revenue. And then another popular one besides EPS is the price to earnings ratio. And so this is just taking the company's stock price to the earnings per share and evaluating what the ratio is between those two. And so the EPS is a very popular one because a higher EPS could indicate that a company has more debt, which means it could potentially be a category for growth, be something that could be growing soon, or it can mean that the company is overvalued. Whereas a lower EPS can typically mean that the company could be undervalued or that the company will not be growing in the future and has more of a stable sort of trajectory. So again, you have to use context to understand these sorts of values. None of these things you really can understand within a vacuum. They have to be compared to the industry at large. So industries that grow more, for example, like previously this would have been the tech industry, typically have higher PE ratios. So like the NASDAQ 100, for example, typically has a higher average PE ratio than, let's say, the S&P 500, which is going to have more mature industries and companies represented in it. And we showed both of these on the overview section. The EPS is here on the bottom of the quote details. And then we have the PE ratio right next to it. So you can kind of compare these. Both of these don't really take into account market cap. So you always kind of want to take a look at the market cap as well, because it can mean different things depending on the market cap. A smaller company with a higher PE ratio could mean a company that's on its way to grow. A larger company with a higher market cap with a higher PE ratio could mean a company that's overvalued or has taken on too much debt. But again, it's very contextual. You can't use any one of these metrics to really come to a conclusion about the company. You must compare it to the overall market, and the other companies in its industry.
Exactly. And then, just some other things since we kind of drew this out for a while. Some other things that we can look at as well is looking at a company's dividend per share too. So when we're looking at dividend per share, this is essentially just how many or how much dividend is being paid out by a company. And this can generally indicate some slight concerns when you're looking at certain companies. Now, if you're looking at a long-term portfolio and you're like, hey, I just, kind of want to get paid out on dividends over time. I want to find a stock that has a huge dividend per share. I really want high dividend payouts. Well, in theory, that sounds good, but not necessarily. So the main thing that you can look at is, we have dividend per share here, but also too, on our right side here, we have our dividend yield, or this 2.21% here on the right side panel. And generally, if you're looking at dividend yield, between 3 to 6% is generally considered pretty good. Once you're getting up to, say, maybe 9, 10%, it's an indication that something's a little wonky. So again, dividend per share is something you can look at, especially if you're looking at long-term investing, and you're trying to find a consistent company that pays out a good dividend. For example, I think if we can look at maybe Ford here, even then Ford, see it's between that 3 to 6%, but pays a pretty high 5.75 percentage based on the overall dividend per share as well. So, and could be an indication that it's maybe something you're looking at for buying long term. We're a little pressed on time because we want to show how we can place stock trades here on the platform. But all of these different ratios, these metrics, you can find descriptions and really dive into some more education on these through our education center. And we'll probably be doing more demos on this in the future. But if you are looking to learn more about these different products, let me go here to our main website. So if you navigate to tastytrade.com, this is just our main website, and you go into the top right on resources and then go over to, drag my screen over. If you go over to the learn section here, so under resources, you go to learn, and then you could type in, you can go to platforms and tools or trading products, but even then you type in fundamentals. And you can see here we have a nice little article here that'll go into the definition, how these different metrics are calculated, and how you can interpret them as well. So if you want to find definitions, dig into these some more, definitely check it out. We also have some decent resources on our help center as well that you can check out, but just getting into fundamental analysis, this is just very eagle eye looking view. There's a lot
Just
more we
scratch the
could go
surface.
into. Yeah, we're just scratching the surface. It's another thing to add to your arsenal on top of maybe technical analysis in terms of any other kind of research that you're putting into a stock. It's very, very useful in determining what you want to invest your money into. But great. Let's see if there is any other questions here.
We did have a question about how do you value startups and new industries, cybersecurities versus established companies. So I'll just briefly touch this. So this is what I was
Mhm.
talking about earlier with the PE ratios. So if it's a newer industry, you want to compare companies in their own industry because a newer industry is typically going to have a higher amount of debt. It's not always hard and fast, but it's typically going to have a higher amount of debt because the industries are not established. They don't have established business models or established revenue flows, etc. So you don't want to compare apples to oranges. You're not going to compare a startup to Apple, or a startup to something that's 100 years old. So really, you value things against other things that are like it. So if a startup has a ton of revenue compared to other startups in its industries, maybe that's a good vehicle for growth in your portfolio. But again, it's just about comparing like things to like things, and not letting yourself get distracted by, a very large mega cap company versus something that's a mid cap in a completely different industry.
Exactly. Great analysis there, my friend. I'm just trying to pull up my drawing tools one more time if I can. Let's see here. Come on, Zoom. Give it a little easier time. Okay, well, we'll do that. That'll work. So, other than looking at our fundamentals today, let's go ahead and show you how you can start placing some stock orders on our platform. So, when it comes to trading on the web or desktop platform, the easiest way to start setting up a trade, or just kind of the most general way to start setting up a stock trade, is looking at the top of the platform here. You can look at the my drawings are going to be rough, but you can look at the top and look at the ask price here to buy, or if you want to short this symbol or sell it, you can go to the bid price as well. So we have those buttons there, and this will queue up a stock order to either buy or to sell. What's nice here on the news and research tab as well is that if we look here, we also have buy, sell, and trade options too. Go back there. Of course, my drawing tools. Oh, there they are. They're always on the far right. Now I can
Hiding
draw.
from you.
Hiding from me. I'm like my hands are not as steady as the nice box there. But we also have the tools in the top right here, or these buttons in the top right, to quickly set up a buy order, sell order, or to trade its options. So, for example, just for right now, if we wanted to buy some stock in our research tab, we can just click on buy here, and this is going to take us to our charting mode. So or not our charting mode, to our trading mode. So right now we're in our trade tab, and in our trade tab, we currently have Ford as our active symbol. So we have a stock order for Ford queued up. We have our order ticket below, and that's right here where we can adjust our order ticket. And also we got a nice little chart on Ford here. This is just a minute chart. Maybe we can look at a daily chart instead. Oops. Boom. We'll clear off our drawings here. And just like our research tab, in terms of looking at our watch list here, if we're looking to trade stock on a different symbol, we can also type it at the top. Maybe we want to go back to Lowe's. We can go find our recent symbol, or we could type in Lowe's again, and then that's going to pull up our trade tab for Lowe's. We can also go to the right side panel, maybe click on Apple here. That's going to pull up Apple to trade in our order ticket. So we'll just go back to Ford right now here to buy some shares of Ford. That's just
And
based on our. Go ahead.
something else I'd like to point out is when you're on the trade ticket, you could have 50, 100 shares queued up. But if you click to a new symbol, it'll automatically change the trade ticket to what you just clicked on. So if you're trying to put in an order for Lowe's, right? And let's say you have 50 shares, it's in the order, you change over on the watch list, it's going to change where that order is going. So just make sure you're cognizant of that if you're trying to look at other stocks while you're placing a trade.
Exactly. And then once we have the symbol that we want to trade, so we're just going to place an example trade on Ford just to show you how you can do it. The simplest way that you can open up this order is going to be sending off a market order just to buy at the current available price. So in our order ticket at the bottom, we have our quantity here where we can adjust this with the arrows. Right now I have an increment of 10, so it's just going to increase by 10. Or I could type in a number and say, hey, I want to buy 5 shares of Ford. So the quantity I would set to 5. And in this case as well, we are buying these shares. And then in the middle here, this is going to be our order price right now. It's going to show us a price that we can set because we have an order type limit order. So this is an order to fill at a certain price or better. You generally maybe want to place this at, below the current stock price. So, Ford is trading at $10.60. Imagine I want to buy 5 shares of Ford when it trades down to $10. I could set my order type to limit and then change my order limit price to 10. And then I could send this off, and that order will work until the market has traded down to that price and gets filled. Now, if I just want to open up this position right away, I can go to order type and change limit to, and of course, my drawing tool is getting in the way. We can change from limit to a market order, and we can click on market order, and then we can ship off this order by going to review and send. Click on that. And we'll get a quick breakdown on our order ticket here, showing us that we're placing a market order day, the current price, our available stock buying power, options buying power, and then also to our the amount of buying power that is going to be taken up by placing this order. So right now we
Breaking the
are in a
bank on
margin
this one.
account. Yeah. So you can see it's going to take up about $26.51 in buying power. You can submit that. And now our order was working. It was a market order, so we ended up getting filled right away. And here as well is that we'll see on here that normally it's going to show on the chart. So honestly here, let's do something. Maybe let's do lows so we get a better example here. So if we go to lows here, and I saw a question coming up, what are these dots on the chart here? So these are actually little news articles. So you can scroll over them. You can remove this as well in the settings by going to events and toggling this off. But these are going to show you just little news articles that you can click on based on that day. So you can kind of see, hey, oh, why was this trading down today? Those partners, blah, 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 blah. That's why you got the blue dots there. But let's do this order again. We're going to set a market order. We'll just buy 1 share. We'll submit that. And we'll see here, what's nice is that on our chart, we'll see our current open position. And we'll see what the change in price has been. So since we bought it, it's gone down about 7 cents. As the price moves, we'll see it move around and our profit or loss change on the chart too. Now, when we're looking to place stock trades, we've opened up a position, but maybe we also want to set a take profit and stop loss on our order and or open a trade by doing that. So maybe let's go to Home Depot. We have Home Depot here, and maybe we want to place a bracket order or an OCO order after we've opened up our position. So what we can do is go here at the top of our order ticket and click on bracket. So if we click on bracket there, that's going to pull up our order ticket where we can see our entry point. So this is where we're going to open our trade. And then once our opening trade has filled and we have our position open, it's going to automatically route a close at profit order and then a stop loss order as well. So we'll have an order working above where we'll close out our position at a certain profit point, and then we'll have a stop loss below as protection if the stock trades down or if we potentially wanted to lock in losses on an existing position. But in this case, again, we'll set our order type here. Maybe we'll just do it a little bit above the current market. And then we'll set our take profit to maybe about 15% on the top side, and maybe we'll do it 20% on the bottom side, or maybe we can do 15% up and down. What's nice is you can just do it on a percentage basis, or you can type in the exact limit price as well. And then on our stop loss, you can also do a stop market. So that means that when Home Depot trades down to say $300, it's going to trigger that stop order and immediately close at the current market price. Whereas if we do a stop limit order, we can say, hey, once it trades down to $300.07, I want you to then send off a limit order at a different price. So depending on market open, market close, or the amount of liquidity in a symbol, a stop limit might be more applicable if you're looking to get in or out of very specific price. But generally, when I'm trading stop losses, it's going to be a stop market. And then when we ship off this order, so let me get up the drawings here, we can go review and send, submit, and we place it a little bit above the market on our limit order. So we got filled right away. But we can see here is that we have our open position, right? That we just opened on Home Depot, the one share here. But then also on our chart, we're going to see our working order. So we have our limit order at 405.97. What's nice is that at any time, I can left click on this order and it's going to select it and I can drag it down. Maybe I want to say, oh, place around like 390. I can drag that down. It's going to cancel my order at 405 and now work a new order at 390. Conversely, if I drag my or like kind of expand my time frame a little bit so I can get a little bit on the lower prices, I can left click on my stop loss below and drag it up a little bit, maybe to 315. Cancel out my last order, now placing right around 315 or where I dragged that price. And in terms of, I see some questions, what percentages do we use for stop losses? Depends on your risk tolerance. So I would say generally around stock trading, people determine their stop losses based on technical analysis. So in this case, right over the last, and let me kind of get clear my drawings here. But if we're looking at this kind of yearly chart here, looking over the past year, and even then, we'll get more into technical analysis in our demo tomorrow. But you can see there's a bit of a resistance level here, right around 320 or so, or 330. So it depends again on if you want to protect your position or how much you want to protect your position based on how many shares you have or your risk tolerance. But a lot of people in this case might set their stop loss right around this 330 level, just based on looking at kind of some of the recent resistance level over the past year. It looks like it hasn't really broken past 323. So what I could do is, get rid of this drawing maybe. Left click that. Oops. We'll keep it on there for now. But we can left click on our order and drag it up to our little resistance line there that we drew. And we could change that, set it up there. So again, it all depends on your outlook on the individual symbol. When it comes to options trading, it's a little bit different where some people use exact certain take profit stop loss points. But I'd say for stock trading, again, it's mainly going to come from your fundamental or technical analysis. And we'll talk more about all the different indicators and studies you can use for technical analysis, and that will greatly help you in trying to determine where you might want to set your take profit or stop loss point. But for today, again, we went a little long here talking about our fundamentals, so we'll save that for tomorrow when we get into the technical analysis. But that's how you can trade on the charts, how you can place stock orders here. I saw a question asking about correlations too. So one kind of cool thing that we can do here as well, and I'll just show you too, if you want to cancel your orders, you can always click on the X here next to the order, and that'll cancel out of your order. We'll show you more how you can manage your positions, place closing orders in our demo tomorrow. But a nice little function here on our charting package is going to be the compare function here. So if you wanted to compare the price of two different companies over the last period, and let me drag this again. Can I
Guess we got to
pull
get
this up?
Lowe's back here.
Yeah, we got to get Lowe's back here. So, um, store. Why isn't this playing nice? Well, whatever. If we wanted to compare, we can go to compare up here on this little chart icon, and you can go to Lowe's, type that in, click on that. And now when we look at our chart here, we have our main chart on Home Depot, right? But then this red line here is showing us Lowe's. So you can see that the two companies, they're very, very similar, but you can see how the different companies are performing. Now, in this case, Lowe's is doing a bit worse than Home Depot over the last bit. It's probably traded down about 3% lower over the year. Now that can be due to the company financials and all that other jazz. But other things you can do too is what's another one? Maybe like we'll look at Walmart, right? We can
Yeah,
also click
Walmart
on
would be good.
compare, maybe look up Walmart, type that in on the compare function, add in Walmart here, and that's going to be the yellow line. So
Uh,
Walmart is more of a defensive stock, I would say, in terms of, when the economy's not necessarily doing great, Walmart is fantastic because people are looking to buy cheap goods, or generally goods at a cheap cost. So you can see over the last year, well, Walmart's been doing a little bit better performance rather than people trying to do construction themselves. And also, I mean, you could think about it too in terms of like the overall housing market plays into Lowe's and Home Depot too. Um, you
well,
could
yeah, we
think
had all those
about,
expenses go up in the housing market the last few years from the pandemic. I'm sure that has not helped those companies.
yeah.
Someone
So,
just said Dollar General. Yeah, that
oh,
would probably be a defensive stock as well.
is Dollar General
I
public?
think it's DG. I don't know if it's public.
Oh, is it DG? Oh, it
Oh,
is. Wow. Okay. Thank
nice.
you. Thank you, Ronald. Yeah, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, Dollar General popping off
Oh
this
my
year. Okay.
gosh.
Well, I mean, I hit that back in the old college days. I always hit up the Dollar General. It's fantastic. But
Man,
you can see that it's doing quite in terms of its overall performance over the last year. It's doing a lot better than Walmart. So
that's
hats
really
off to
interesting.
Dollar
Wow.
General. But yeah, so again, it's just a compare function, super, super nice, especially as we're kind of building in, looking at the financials. You can add in this technical analysis or looking at the pricing over time. And it's super, super nice. So I see someone asking the question, can you look at Vero?
Well, I think it's interesting. We compared Lowe's and HD. We compared all their financials, and we saw that the financials on Lowe's weren't as good. And then we looked at the chart, and it was kind of accurate. There wasn't a huge difference in financials, but you can see it in how the stock price trended. So you see all this information, just every little detail gives you a bigger picture of maybe what I should invest in or what I should not invest in, which is really what these tools exist for, right? None of them are going to be a holy grail. There's no panacea analysis that's going to give you everything you need to know. You sort of build your analysis piece by piece, and you use every tool we have to sort of come to the best conclusion for yourself.
If you have any follow-up questions or want to reach out to us, you can go to our website and at the bottom you can find contact us too. It'll take you to our page here where you can find all of our phone numbers. So we have 888-247-1963 for those of you in the US. If you're calling internationally, you'd want to use 312-724-7075 and you can talk to one of us here on the trade desk. We're happy to talk through any questions, walk you through anything on the platform. We're open to doing one-on-one Zoom meetings. If you want to learn about the platform and get set up, we like to take our time and make sure that you're comfortable and getting used to our entire functionality and that you can get off to your trading, get on the run. So, as Luke or myself,
Hey, you
we
might
all
end up
start
talking to me.
somewhere.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
exactly,
Yeah, you
exactly.
could call right now in about 10 minutes. You might be talking to me, so who knows?
And then we also have all of our emails here. So we have support@tastytrade.com. If you're trading or have specific trade questions that are coming in, you can go to trade desk at tastytrade.com. If you're looking for specific features, again, this is just giving us more gunpowder to make our management team finally give us some more resources on the development side. But if you have some features you really, really want to see on the platform, you can reach out to feedback@tastytrade.com and that'll get added into our development discovery. And it honestly gives us a little bit more justification as to pushing out these different changes. We know people want it. It's just a matter of, oh, is this what we should focus on right now? Well, yeah, if a bunch of people are asking for it, we should, right? That's how we make our platform. It's based off of requests.